sweating to death if I keep going too much longer. So,
yeah, and you've got Mark doing your poster.
I have, yeah. Mark's joined us now, so that's a good opportunity to say thank you to Mark for all the wonderful processes he's done, not only for the Avengers, but he's done for Bond, for Star Wars, and I'm sure at least half the people that watch my events is thanks to his advertising. So I can't thank enough, Mark, for your wonderful work.
Well, they are quite eye-catching, aren't they?
Oh yeah, he's a brilliant gift, great eye. Because you know Mark, I take it.
I'm not sure if I do. I'm better on faces than I am on names.
There was a Bond book that came out a few years ago. It's called Some Kind of Hero, and it's probably the most popular Bond book there is, played in the last sort of 20, 30 years. You're not a Bond fan if you don't have a copy, basically. And he did the cover artwork for it. So
yeah, he also did it for Rocky Taylor's autobiography.
Oh right, I didn't know that.
Again, I think somewhere. I can't lay my hands on it right away, but the cover is Mark's.
Yeah, I think I could picture it. I think I've seen it on Facebook. Yeah, it's another nice bit of art like that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's offered to do the cover for my book, but I'm still waiting for a reply from the publishers about what they normally do, whether they do it or they want me to do it or what. So once I know, pardon me, once I know, I can get back to him.
Oh yeah. I think Mark would do a really good one for you, definitely.
I'm sure he would.
So I think we've got a few other people to join us. I mean, what we'll do is, I'm not sure when Ray's going to join us, but I would have thought it'd be fairly soon. So I think if we sort of get started in a couple of minutes, we're just slightly shy of 7:30, and then when Ray, he'll just come on the chat and just say he's ready to come on, and then I think everyone will just pause the DVD, and then just so we don't have to worry about what's happening, and then just have a little conversation with Ray, and then when he's done, then we go back to the DVD that
right. Okay. Do we know where everybody's from this time?
I think we've got a few. We've got Jan from the Netherlands again. But if anybody wants to put in the chat where they're from, so we get an idea of how many countries we've got watching, that'd be great.
Just out of interest.
Yeah, we had quite a wide range, didn't we, last time? I think
we did, yes.
I mean, what's the strangest place that somebody has, or the strangest country that somebody's recognised you from, or you've seen the Avengers playing in a hotel room, for example?
I don't know. It just seems to be universal. Everybody seems to know it.
Oh yeah. So I think because it's so quintessentially British, or the British, the idea of Britain that other countries have of us, I suppose they quite like. That's partly the appeal, I guess.
Yes, and I'd rather be known as a country that's like the Avengers than like Dickens.
Well, yes, that's right.
The Russians think we're like Dickens, don't they?
Yeah, I suppose they do. Yeah. And you've got everybody that thinks that we're like a Richard Curtis film, like Love Actually, where it's all very idealistic and the heightened reality again that the Avengers did so well. So have you been to many Avengers events in other countries, or is it mostly the UK?
I think it's all been the UK so far.
Has the extended lockdown changed your plans at all for the summer, or are you unaffected?
Oh, it's changed our plans since last year. My husband comes from Jersey, and we usually like to go to Jersey once a year, and we haven't been able to do that. Although theoretically you could at the moment, it doesn't work out very well because the hotels have got different rules. They don't always coincide with the ferry, and it's just too difficult at the moment.
Right.
And last year you could go over there, but you couldn't go out anyway. You couldn't go to a restaurant or anything like that. So there wasn't a lot of point in going, really.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, my plan was always stay put really for the summer, and I've got
Yes.
in beginning of August because my wife's doing a half marathon up there, and that's going to continue as far as we know. So.
Well, last year we did a huge amount of work on the garden. It's only a small garden, but it had a total renovation. And then during the winter we worked on the house. So there's been a lot of work done on the house. It'll just progress like that. I suppose it's some benefit from it.
Yeah, in many ways it's been quite a good opportunity, hasn't it, to sort of do things and think about stuff that you wouldn't normally.
Yeah, except everyone's sold out of all the things you want.
Yes, that's
because everybody's doing it.
Yeah. I mean, you try and book shows and things, so next year everybody's already booked it up because it's all been.
That's right. Yeah, limited numbers.
Yeah. Because there was going to be a Superman concert at the Albert Hall. I don't know if you heard about that one.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they're going to do Superman the movie, project it on a big screen, and then there's going to be the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra was going to play the entire score of the film.
Oh, right.
Throughout, and that was delayed, of course, because of the lockdown, and it's just obviously being pushed back, I think, next year now. So, because it was going to happen in July, but it was obviously one of the victims of it all. I'm just going to quick look, make sure we've got everybody. Yep. We're still waiting on one person. I'm just going to check that. I think, and this person hasn't joined us before. So just to make sure it hasn't emailed me with any problems. Okay, I've got no emails. I'm hoping he's finding his way to us. I'll give him one more minute and then we'll get started.
Okay.
So I'll just take the opportunity to say to everybody just to get their copies of Sleeper episode ready to go. We're going to pause on the opening helicopter shot. So
Do you want it? What? We've got to pause on the opening helicopter shot. There we are. Right. We're ready.
Lovely. I haven't got any other emails at all. And then we'll get going. Okay, so I think we should make a start. So welcome everybody to this watch along with the new Avengers episode Sleeper. I'm delighted to be joined again by Cyd Child, who was the fight arranger for the first series of the new Avengers. Cyd's credits includes episodes of the original Avengers with Daniel Rigg and Linda Thornton, Superman 1, Superman 2, the James Bond film For Your Eyes Only, Return of the Pink Panther, and is there anything else you'd like to add to that list, Cyd?
Pink Panther Strikes Again?
Yeah, of course, yes, as an acting role, yeah. And it's quite a impressive list by itself, isn't it, really, I think. So, okay, so we'll make a start then. So everybody's got their remotes to hand. I'll do a countdown from 5, and then we'll press play. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. Okay. So first of all, Cyd, I wanted to ask, obviously there was quite a big gap between the original Avengers finishing and the new Avengers. Did you anticipate it returning, or did you think it was gone, and how do you feel about it returning?
Well, I thought that it was finished. We had the wrap party. As far as I knew, that was the end of the Avengers. And it was, what, 7 years or something?
7 years,
It was quite a while, and then it all started happening again, which was lovely.
And did you first of all hear rumblings, or was it a phone call that said we're back?
I think I heard a few rumblings, nothing sort of definite. And then Ray called me and asked me to come in, and it was all beginning.
And when you had the wrap party for the last Avengers, was it clear at that point you weren't coming back, or was that decision made later?
Well, as far as we all knew, that was the end of it. There was talk of there might be something happening in the future, but nobody knew anything. And as far as we were concerned, that was the end of it.
Was it a surprise that it was cancelled?
Well, that it ended?
Yeah.
It was a little bit, because it'd been going for quite a few years, and it was sort of part of life.
Yeah.
You know, the Avengers was always there. And you know, I thought, well, it's one of these things, it'll change, and they'll say, oh no, we're going to do another series, but it didn't.
I mean, I think it was still very popular in the UK, but I think the important American market,
apparently so, that it wasn't getting enough sales there, so that was that.
So when you came on board on this series, obviously your job title changed to fighter ranger. What was the main change in terms of your job on this series?
Well, it meant that I was looking after the fights rather than taking part in them. Ray also asked me to give Gareth and Joanna like a boot camp training to start them off, to get them really fit. So we went into Pinewood every day for a few weeks leading up to the beginning of the New Avengers, and put them through their paces.
And what was it like being at Pinewood versus Elstree?
Well, it's just different. I was very used to Elstree. I've been to Pinewood before. It's just slightly different setup, basically the same procedure, but different places. I mean, I quite liked it because it was much nearer to home.
Oh, right, yeah. And of course, a lot of the exteriors for the New Avengers use the manor house, and so
that's right, yes.
So I think, am I right saying it was perhaps a bit more studio bound in that respect compared to the old series?
Yes, I suppose it was, really. I hadn't thought of that.
So you said you were putting Gareth and Joanna through their paces. Did either of them have much experience, or were they sort of, do you have to sort of build them up kind of from scratch?
Well, it was just to make sure they were as fit as they could be, really. So we took over the old band room at Pinewood and put the equipment in that we needed, and then they had an hour every morning. And after they'd had an hour with me, Joanna then did another hour with the ballet teacher. So she did get very fit and very supple.
I'm just looking at the London shots in what we're seeing now, and it's amazing to see how quiet London looks.
Yes.
Back in the 70s.
Yes, it was probably at some ridiculously early hour of the morning. I don't know, because I didn't work on that shot.
I mean, so obviously some of the location scenes which you are involved, obviously that was probably quite early on the Sunday morning sort of thing.
It could be, yes, unless it was out in the countryside somewhere. Yeah,
because it probably doubled, because obviously shutting down London would have been a bit, that's beyond
difficult.
Even back then. So obviously you selected this episode for this evening. Why do you think it's why is it one of your favourites?
We did a car chase bit, which was quite exciting, and there was a fight in a retail outlet area. And Joanna was wearing these wonderful pajamas that looked good. In fact, I bought them afterwards for a while. Yeah, I just liked it,
I assume you didn't keep the pajamas long term.
No, I didn't. In the end, I did actually sell them on.
Ah, good.
I was accumulating so much stuff that I thought I've got to thin it all down. So I did actually get rid of them.
So you were keeping bits and pieces of your wardrobe into a different production?
Well, I was allowed to buy certain stuff at the end if I wanted to. I didn't often take them up on it because, not particularly with the new Avengers, but with the old Avengers, I used to just ruin them, you know. So it wasn't really worth buying, but one or two I did.
Oh,
but I think that was the only thing I bought from the new Avengers. I just liked them. I liked the applique on the back.
Oh yeah, they're very nice indeed. Do you remember much about the director of this episode? It was Graham Clifford.
No, I don't remember much about him. I think Ray did some stuff, didn't he? Did Ray do second unit?
I'm not sure. I mean, obviously when Ray joined us, so
yes, Ray did some because he was there for the drive-in. I remember.
Because obviously Ray directed several episodes of the New Avengers, but I was wondering earlier how much he was around for other things. So
yeah, I remember him being there, so I know he did.
One of the bits I wanted to mention that we touched on very briefly last time was John Huff. I don't know if you have any memories about him at all.
He didn't work on this episode.
Oh, not this episode, but some of your previous ones.
He did quite a few other episodes on the other Avengers, on the first Avengers.
Yeah.
He did have quite an artistic approach to what we were doing. He liked to sort of get unusual shots. And he had absolutely no mercy with stunt people. He had a picture in his mind, and that's what he wanted. You know, he didn't care whether it was going to endanger anybody. He wanted that shot.
Right. And was he a director that was? You had that incident with the motorcycle. Was that one of John's? Or
no, I don't think that was John. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think John Krish did some of it, but I mean the bit with the motorbike I think was second unit. I can't remember who did it because I had two different directors on that one.
Ian's just pointed out that Graham Clifford directed a couple of episodes of Barnaby Jones, which may have been due to Ray Austin's connection. So that was
right.
Quite interesting.
So
obviously it's quite a different dynamic. Obviously we're seeing the trio on the screen now. What was the relationship between Patrick, Joanna, Gareth? Did they go on quite well?
I think they got on really, really well. And I think Joanna and Gareth used to sort of tease each other quite a lot.
And how did you get the sense that Patrick felt he was perhaps slightly put to one side because obviously his comes in a much younger, sort of male lead? Did he feel?
Well, I don't know how he felt about it. He may have felt a little bit different, being more of a father figure than a lead. Well, he was a lead, but his position was like an authoritarian figure.
Yeah, I think his character evolves quite nicely in this.
Yes, yeah.
So, what was Gareth like to work with? Because obviously, sadly, he left us far too soon.
Yes, he did. He was a really nice chap, actually. He'd got quite a subtle sense of humour. I think everybody got on really well with him.
And same with Joanna?
Yes. Yeah, Joanna, she kept on, she wanted me to double for her. And Ray kept on saying, no, you're too big, you wouldn't look right. And Joanna wouldn't leave it. So she secretly arranged for me to go to her hairdresser with a wig and get a wig cut to look like her. And then she asked me to come into the studio and meet her, and hid me in her dressing room while she went downstairs to go and get two outfits, the same, and we put them on. And then she took me down to the set and demanded that we did a screen test.
Oh, wow.
And then they said, yes, I could double for her. So I did do some doubling for her.
Hmm. I mean, was she very eager to do her own stunts, or you know?
She could do quite a lot, but the insurance people won't allow important characters in these things to do too much, because it's too expensive if anything happens to them.
I did a watch along with Ray for the episode Target, and there's obviously a sequence where Joanna is on this rooftop walking along and part of the Target rifle range. Was there ever discussion that you would have done that, because it's obviously seemed quite a dangerous, you know, insurance wise, that sort of thing?
I think Joanna did that herself. At that stage, they decided that I wasn't going to be doubling for her, and I've got a feeling that we had Dorothy Ford on standby. Unfortunately, Dorothy's gone now as well. But I think Joanna did it all. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, the camera definitely shows that it's her, and it's quite you know, impressive sequence. So was there any difference? Did this have a different feel to it than the previous Avengers? Obviously, there's a few different production members, or was it kind of? Well, it was slightly different, but just different. That was all. And even the first series, the second series obviously had a lot more money problems, and I think that's why they couldn't afford a fighter ranger on that one. It was very sort of penny pinching come the second series. Did you ever get a sense that there was any sort of behind the scenes issues in terms of funding when you were on the New Avengers? Well, there was, because they would only call me when they absolutely needed me. They wouldn't call me to give me a chance of working things out in advance. We did have an issue one day on the episode Norse, and I think there were two men and Joanna, and we'd got this fight, and we should have finished. I think we did 2 days or something on it, and we should have finished it by the end of the second day, but there was another couple of shots that needed to be done the next day. And they were trying to say they didn't need doubles, but they did. So I had to have a big argument to make sure the doubles did come for those people. And then the assistant came up to me and said, well, now we can't afford to have you. So I couldn't come. Right. So they finished off the fight without me, because they'd got doubles instead. It was a bit weird, because normally you would have had the fight ranger there for the complete fight. Yeah. Because I think we were saying last time that on the Avengers it was pretty much a full-time job. So this was obviously much more part-time sort of for you. Because were you doing other stunt work around about the same sort of time, or were you sort of? Well, with other things. Yeah. Yes, from time to time I did. Don't ask me which ones they were though, because I won't remember that. I won't ask you. I'd have to look that one up. There was a slightly different dynamic with the New Avengers, in that Laurie Johnson, the composer, was also a producer. Did that change the mix? Do you remember Laurie Johnson at all? I remember Laurie. I didn't have an awful lot to do with him, but it didn't change what was going on. And in terms of Brian's influence in this sort of time, obviously Brian and Albert back, and that was obviously, so was it kind of like sort of picking up where you left off in terms of working with them? Yes. Yeah, it was the old group. So I was going to ask you, because obviously we'll get to your scenes a bit later, but I just wanted to touch on A Few Eyes Only, because last time you mentioned that obviously you had there was a lot of money with that production. They had lots of double cars, all that sort of thing. What was it like working on A Few Eyes Only? It was amazing, really. The Bond production group is like a big family. Well, it is a big family, or was a big family, because you'd have Cubby Broccoli and Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, and you know, it was always the same people, and
extremely nice, friendly people. And it's easy to relax and get on with them.
Were you on the entire film? Was it mainly Carol Bouquet that you were doubling for?
Yeah, I doubled Carol Bouquet out in Corfu. I don't think I did anything when they came back to England, and my parrot worked on it.
Oh yes, yeah. I was going to ask you about your parrot, because obviously your parrot was in the Living Daylights as well. Would you have visited the set with him, or was it just?
Oh yeah, I can't just put him on the bus and let him go on his own. I have to go there with him.
Yeah. So that must be nice to be back on the Bond set a few years later.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the parrot Chrome went on For Your Eyes Only, and they all liked him so much that they asked for him again when it came to the Living Daylights.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah. It's not something that I knew. It being a big Bond fan, I never knew that it was the same parrot until we.
No.
I think.
Well,
sorry.
I was just to say, when we were out in Corfu, I saw one of the scripts, and it was talking about the parrot. Yeah. So I said to Barbara Broccoli, "Have you cast your parrot yet?" And she said, "No, we're going to do auditions when we get back to England." So I said, "Well, can you include my parrot in the auditions?" Yeah. So that's what we did. He went along, and they decided they liked him. And first of all, they said, "We'll have a standby parrot because he'll get tired." But he didn't get tired. He loved it. So he did it all by himself.
Real professional.
Yes, yeah.
I think Ray is actually ready to come on. So if I ask everybody just to pause their
Can you pause it, please, Pete?
And then we're going to come back to it after Ray Austin's
okay.
A little hello. So I'm just going to get Ray on the screen for us. Bear with me. I'm just going to see if we can join audio. It won't be too long. Oh, hi Ray, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see and hear. I press start my video, right?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Hi Ray.
Hello. Hello, Cyd.
Hi Ray. Hi Ray. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. How's everything going?
It's going well, yes, apart from the lockdown.
Yeah, apart from that, yeah, well, we're all into that.
Yes.
We're all into that. Are you having a good show? Is everybody enjoying?
Well, I hope they are.
Yeah, they're still with us. So.
That's great. That's great. So what have you been talking about?
We've been talking about For Your Eyes Only and the old Avengers and some of the new Avengers.
I don't remember too much about Sleeper. I was doing something else.
You did do some of it, if you remember, when we were down at Southall Gasworks doing the car chase.
Oh yeah, yes, vaguely.
Yeah,
vaguely.
When I had to break the glass with my hand.
I remember.
I thought that would make you remember.
I remember. Boy, oh boy. Great. Yeah, there's so many of them, Cyd. There's so many of them.
Well, I'm sure. Yes, you've done so many.
And Philip and I have been through a lot of them already. You know, as we said the other day, I shot over 300 hours of television, so my mind wanders from one to the other.
I'm sure.
Well, I think we're doing Return of the Man from U.N.C.L.E. next week or something or the other.
Yes, Saturday after next. Yes, it's. I think that would be quite a good one. So,
yeah, it would be fun. We've got Michael Sloan coming on.
Michael Sloan, yeah, and a few actors as well. I don't want to announce too many people just in case somebody pulls out. But I think it'd be quite good. It's ironic that it is a reunion movie, and we're having a reunion as part of the reunion movie, if that makes sense. So
You'll have to do a Return of the Bionic Man again soon,
Oh, okay, yeah.
because I shot the 2-hour pilot of that as well.
If you want to do that with me, Ray, I'd be very happy to do that.
He's off, Cyd. He's off straight away.
Got his little notebook out.
Well, always planning, always planning. I was saying to Cyd that Graham Clifford directed Sleeper. Do you remember Graham at all, Ray?
Graham Clifford, yes.
Yeah.
He used to be engaged, or I think he married the production, Albert Fennell's secretary, Patricia, someone or the other.
Right.
Patricia Robinson, I think it was. Oh no, she was Brian Clement's secretary for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, Graham Clifford. Yeah, is he still with us?
I'd have to double check. I'm not entirely sure, Ray. Yeah, you never can tell, can you? Sometimes.
No.
But I'll let you know about that one.
We were saying the other day, Cyd, I'm probably one of the only directors left of the Avengers and New Avengers. They've all said goodbye to us, sadly.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of people dropping off the perch.
Like your parrot.
Well, yes, yeah.
Ian's just posted. Apparently, Graham Clifford's still with us.
That's good.
Ah.
That's good.
It's good somebody knows.
Yeah.
I think he lives over here. I'm not sure. But that's the good thing about this, Cyd. When you're on with Philip, if you can't remember things, usually someone in the audience beats you to it.
That's right. They know everything.
They know more about the shows than we did. Do you remember when we did the
quiz?
No, I was going to say the university at Chichester.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Do you remember the quiz in the pub?
Yes, I do vaguely again.
There was a whole group of us. There was you, there was Brian Clements, there was me. Oh, I can't remember the others. It was a little group of us, about 6 or 7, and they had a quiz. And I thought, well, we're going to do well here. We've got the chap who wrote it, and all these people who've worked on it, and we did abysmally. And they knew everything.
Yeah, when I was doing my talk in that auditorium, number one, the surprise was that everybody was so young. I thought everybody was going to be old and not too many people there. And when I walked in, they were all youngsters. And most of them knew more about the Avengers than I did. And anything I couldn't remember, someone in the audience was shouting it out. It was a lot of fun. Well, you were there. You were there.
Yeah, it was.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun. At any rate, I just wanted to say hello and wish you the best and hope the show goes well and everybody's liking it.
Yeah, thank you, Ray.
All right, then. So I will cash out and leave you guys to go on and watch the show.
Okay.
Thanks, Ray.
Great. Hope to see you as always.
Okay,
Yeah, see you again.
Okay. Bye, all the viewers, the Avengers fans. Stay with it. Stay with it.
You will indeed.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks a lot,
Bye.
mate. Bye. It's always nice to see Ray, isn't it?
It is. Should we start again?
Let's start again. Yeah.
Right. Just get my man to switch it on.
I don't have an assistant. I don't have an assistant. I'm quite jealous you've got an assistant.
Well, actually, I'll have to admit it's because I don't know how to use the machinery.
Yeah, I can't do the same excuse, unfortunately. So if everyone's ready, I'll go from 5 and then we'll press play again. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. Okay. So obviously we're starting to get to the location work. So again, with this taking a few days to shoot, or how quickly?
Oh yeah. I mean, the bit that I was talking to Ray about that he directed with the car chase, that was 2 days. So it does take a while.
And do you have any particular memories of the car chase that stand out?
Well, yes. Well, the whole car chase really, but there was a bit where there's a machine gun firing at her and it hits the windscreen and it goes white, like it does. And I had to break the windscreen with my arm. You know, standard procedure. You break the windscreen so you can see. But of course, she's wearing her pajamas, so you've got no protection.
Yeah.
So no, it was this arm. That's right. So I ended up cutting my arm quite badly.
Cool.
And then we had another bit where she has to crash the car into a wall. And I didn't have enough hands to do everything I needed to do. I needed to pull on the handbrake, but also use the steering wheel. And the man who was sitting in the Mini was Tex Fuller, who was a stuntman, and he had to pretend he was asleep. So he had to pull on the handbrake for me. I had to just shout at him for when he had to do it. And he pulled on the handbrake. So it was a joint effort, really. So although it looks as if she's got a sleeping man in the car, he was actually quite active.
Yeah, it must have been probably quite disconcerting for somebody to be, you know, with his eyes shut and somebody else driving, and you know, that sort of.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
We'll get to that eventually.
I mean, would you have had a say in what car she was driving, or would that have been perhaps a script decision?
No, they'd already decided which car they were using. Yeah, choices like that were not left to me.
I mean, it's obviously in terms of, but I suppose if there's any sort of big stunt where there might be safety concerns, you might perhaps have an input perhaps at that point.
Well, yes, yeah. I mean, if they had something with like big wing mirrors on it and somebody was going over the bonnet, then the wing mirrors would have to come off.
I think that brings us to quite an interesting story about Through Eyes Only, where you were doubling Cassandra Harris, and if you want to tell that story.
Yeah, well, they left with the it had frog eyes on it, on the dune buggy. So they left those on, but I think my legs took off one of them. I couldn't really take them off because it was part of the car.
Yeah. And I think you have quite a big impact on the windscreen, I think, of the.
Yes, yeah, my face cracked it.
Because that again wasn't supposed to happen, was it? I assume.
Well, what happened was it was the Remy Julien driving team, and I'd rehearsed it with the younger brother, and we knew exactly what we were doing and exactly what speed, and we were both quite happy with what we were going to do. And then at the last minute, the older brother said, "I'm doing it," and pushed his younger brother out of the way. Well, of course, I hadn't rehearsed with him, and he was actually going faster than we'd rehearsed it. But of course, you want to get the thing done. So you don't want to stand there and say, no, you're going to not, well, if you'd been going faster than I could have done it, I would have done, but you want to just do it. So I did do it, but it was a bit of an impact.
Yeah, it looks like a very brutal, you know, works obviously in the film, but, you know, of course, you've got to think as a person doing that stunt and, you know.
Yeah. Well, if you slow it down and watch it, you'll see the light get disconnected and the windscreen crack.
Oh, I'll do that next time.
When you've got nothing better to do. Oh, I'll just watch that.
The beauty of lockdown, isn't it? We can just.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't feel guilty about sitting at home watching TV, do we? So that's
no.
I mean, obviously, also on Pure Eyes Only, you doubled Carol, I think it was, on the underwater sequences. And am I right saying that Carol can do much of the water stuff because you had a sinus problem or something like that? Does that ring a bell?
Well, we had two different units. We had the one in Corfu, which was doing like the stuff on the surface of the sea. And then they had another one, which I think was out in the Bahamas, where they were doing the underwater stuff. So where they're actually underwater, that's out there. Apart from the stuff with the submarine, which I think was in a tank at Pinewood.
Yeah. So it was, well, silly question, but I take it was nice shooting out in the Bahamas.
Well, I didn't get there, unfortunately. No, I was in Corfu.
Oh, right. Well, still very nice, I imagine.
Well, yes.
So I imagine, was the Bond film perhaps the most glamorous sort of production to work on in your?
Yes, I think it was. It was quite impressively professional. You know, they flew us out there. We had to meet at, I think it was Luton Airport, and we went out, and our flight number was MO007 or M007, something like that, because the whole flight was 007. And we were all given a Bucks Fizz, a glass of Bucks Fizz as we were going out there. And of course, into the flight, I began to think, I think I'll have to find the loo. And somebody said, you go through that door over there. And I opened the door, and there was like a screen. We were sitting in normal, you know, the normal chairs you get on an airplane, but there was like a bulkhead there with a door. And I went through the door, and everything from that bulkhead going forward was stripped, and they'd got all the cameras all tied down with nets over them and everything. And I thought, my goodness, this is really professional, this, you know.
Yeah. So obviously, how would the experience of the Avengers then be different to, say, a huge production like Bond in terms of?
Well, I mean, it's basically the same kind of thing that, you know, you've all got the same duties, and everything goes on in the same sort of way, but they want to get their money's worth from you. You've been taken out there, and you're in a nice hotel, and you're being looked after, but they want you up at dawn, and you'll work all day until dusk, really, and then the same the next day. You know, you don't get time to mess around. It's work.
So it's a bit more grueling from that perspective.
Well, I mean, it's costing them a lot of money, and they want you to earn your keep.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I used to think it was quite funny because we had to get up very early in the morning, and this is the car bit coming up.
Yeah.
I might be slightly ahead of you, I'm not sure. We would have to be up really early in the morning, and most of the hotel was taken up with people working on the Bond film, and you could hear all the alarms going off at the same time all over the hotel as everybody was getting up.
Oh yeah, I think we're on that scene now, I think.
Yeah.
The car.
Yeah, Ray was directing all of that. This was down at Southall Gasworks.
Here we are, yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of injuries, would it be little things like this sequence and the Bond films? So those kind of your sort of was it sort of more sort of mundane things, if you like, that sort of sometimes went wrong and left a mark? What
you mean on the Avengers?
Yeah, in terms of sort of you know, like plate glass or fire, that sort of thing. Were those the things that you had to be most wary of?
Yes, because you're never quite sure how it's going to go.
So did you ever have any particular injuries on any stunt work, or were you fairly sort of lucky from that perspective?
I got lots of bruises, and like with this one where I cut my arm. I did actually hurt my back on the Avengers once, but I was all right afterwards, but I couldn't finish the day. It was a fall that didn't go quite how I had hoped it was going to go.
Yeah. Did you do many high falls, or was it sort of in terms of height and stuff?
Well, to be honest, I think the high falls, you're more careful about everything you do. It's the sort of the fight things, especially if you rehearse a fight over and over and over and over again. Then I find that you get bruises because you're doing the same things all the time. You're hitting the same part of yourself all the time. Brunel University, yeah.
yeah, Ian's put, we're at now university for these scenes. Did you return there with the Dead Man's Treasure a few years ago?
Yes, we went there on that weekend.
Oh, Joseph says I remember it well. I did want to ask you, Cyd, about the return of Pink Panther, because obviously you were doubling Catherine Snell for some sequences. What was that film like?
Well, Blake Edwards is a really lovely man, and everything went very well.
Did you encounter Peter Sellers at all?
Yes, we had quite a long chat because he used to do judo, which of course is my sport. Oh, yeah. And he gave a trophy to there's a club called the LJS, the London Judo Society, and there's the Peter Sellers Club, which they compete for every year. I don't know if they do now, but they were. So we had quite a long chat about it. We were doing a fight, so I had to be involved with him with the fight. And we got chatting about that. He was quite astonished that they were still competing for it.
Oh, right. So, because a lot of people have very different sort of perceptions of Peter Sellers and different sort of, I think he's one of those people that depended on how he felt at the time, but I assume he was lovely to you.
Yeah, I liked him. I thought he was lovely.
And how about Catherine as Lady Lytton?
I didn't actually get to know her very well because the shots I did doubling for her, she wasn't there. It was just me. So it was just me and Blake Edwards and the camera crew. And everything she did was at another point in the film. So I didn't actually get to meet her. So
were you doing the doubling for when she steals
the burglar? Yes. Yeah. Joe Dunn did the outside stuff out in Morocco, and then when they came back to England, all the interior, that was me.
Oh, lovely. So was that how you ended up getting your appearance in Strikes Again? Because that connection.
Yes. Because it was just me and Blake and the camera crew, when they were setting up, we would just be sitting next to each other and chatting. And he found out about my parrot. Yes. So he wanted me to bring him in. So I brought him in because I think Blake has got a soft spot for parrots. Yeah. And then he wanted to use him in Strikes Again. So he came on that.
Oh, fantastic. I have had a question from Henry Holland. He said, have you any memories of working on the film Crossplot with Roger Moore?
Well, I only did a little bit on that. I had to be on a swing. It's I think it's probably the lead actress. I'm not sure. She was in like a crinoline thing, and she's on a swing, and it has to go wrong, and she comes off the swing, and Roger Moore catches her. So I was caught in Roger Moore's arms.
That sounds very nice. Yes. So, well, I wanted to ask you about Roger, and did he? Have you ever witnessed any of his practical jokes? And
oh yes, yeah. He used to be on the next stage to us, working on The Saint. We were on the Avengers, and he used to sneak in the back door and come and play jokes. In particular, one he did was on All Done with Mirrors, yeah, where Linda is creeping up the lighthouse stairs, which were of course in the studio, and there's nobody else around, and she's creeping up the stairs. And she does this, and then he comes running down the stairs with the suitcase, morning, and goes past her, which is not anything to do with the story whatsoever. Frightened the life out of her, made everybody laugh.
Yeah. I imagine the same on the Bond film again, sort of, he was always sort of.
Yes, yeah, there's a bit in For Your Eyes Only where, he's got this young skater that's keen on him, and she's got a coach. Yeah. Well, there's a bit where the coach picks up her suitcase, it's towards the end, and says something about we're off now, or we're going, or whatever. And they'd rehearsed it, and the suitcase was empty. Well, while she wasn't looking, Roger filled it up with rocks or something that she couldn't lift. He thought that was very funny.
Yeah, definitely. have another question come in. Oh, Ian commented that David Schofield looks like he genuinely nearly got his hand cut off by the falling glass in the burglary scene we just watched. So again, it might have looked more dangerous than it was, because I assume
I wasn't there for that.
You would always use sugar glass and things. You wouldn't use anything. Sometimes use
no, apart from the car, which was the normal, windscreen glass. But I mean, if you know that you're going to be breaking glasses over people or breaking windows or something, you use sugar glass.
So in terms of obviously the car glass, was it obviously it was partially shattered because of the effect of the gunshot, but I take it was reasonably weak when you had to put your hand through.
No, it was just an ordinary car windscreen which they broke.
Yeah.
And then I had to bash it with my arm to make a hole to look through. And I ended up with lots of little pieces of glass sticking in the back of my arm.
Yeah. I suppose when Brian Clemens, who obviously supervised all the scripts, regardless of whether he was the main writer on them, it's quite easy to type. Purdy wears a dressing gown, but not thinking ahead that you've got to do.
Well, no, that's not his worry, is it? It's the stunt people's worry.
No. I mean, do you find that some directors are more clued up in terms of what the stunt performers were doing, what you were doing as a fighter range, and perhaps others weren't so clued into the process?
Well, if you have somebody like Ray understands totally about stunt work, because that's his thing. So there was never any problem. Some others, like I was saying on Murdersville, when we did the ducking scene, he didn't actually like that very much.
No. And I was wondering about director John Glenn, who directed For Your Eyes Only, whether, because again, was his experience with Bond action, and was he again a good director from your point of view? Yes,
he was very good. And like with the Parrot, he was quite willing for us to sort of work out things, then he would fit that in, because in the end bit on For Your Eyes Only, where Margaret Thatcher rings through on Bond's watch, the day before, John Glenn had said to me, "Can you do anything with the watch?" And I said, "Well, what do you want?" He said, "Well, what do you think he can do?" So I said, "Well, we'll see what we can do tonight." So my husband spent the entire evening with him, playing with his own watch with chrome to see what he would do. Yeah. And that's what we ended up with.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. It's a really nice comic sequence that I think
yes.
Really nice.
Yeah.
And unique in the Bond series. So in terms of your role in this particular episode, are you mainly with the three main leads, or are you at any point arranging any more of the action that's happening?
It was mainly, I doubled Jo for the drive-in, and a little bit on the fight. She did most of the fight herself.
Yeah.
But the rest of it was not left to me. I thought this bit was quite funny. Are you on the same as me, where Patrick's sitting at the seat and Gareth's leaning on the bus stop?
I think I'm a couple of seconds behind you. I'll just get to that.
All right.
Oh yes, here we are. Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was quite funny, the way they did that.
And then moving the bus stop closer.
Yeah, they keep moving a little bit closer.
Yeah, again, it's a very fun script, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, how do you think the new Avengers holds up compared to the old? Do you hold it in the same esteem? Not
quite, no. I think the episodes with Diana Rigg were so outstandingly good that none of the others quite hold up to it. But I mean, it was good in its own way, but I still preferred the old ones.
Yes, a very high bar, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Or Joseph says that they've been shooting some stuff in Kensington at this point, so near Hyde Park for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. The fans will probably tell you the exact road and the exact number of the house.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that they. Or Joseph visited the location about 10 years ago.
Yes.
So I think that the Chichester event, I think Brian was talking about the New Avengers briefly, and I think he was saying that the difference was that he tried to make this a bit more deep, a bit more psychological, a bit more sort of character driven than perhaps the old Avengers. And he in a very sort of self-deprecating kind of way, he said that the difference between the old Avengers and the New Avengers was that he used thicker cardboard for the characters than he did in the previous. So
yes, well, it had to be different, didn't it? Because before it was Patrick and Diana as a couple, and this was different again. See, this is quite a long shot of Jo running, and she did all of that. You know, she was getting really fit by then. That's all in one shot. It's not cut at all.
That's impressive, isn't it? Yeah, it's a very long shot, isn't it? Very long shot.
Yeah.
So how much time would you have had with Joanna and Gareth before it came time to actually starting shooting the series?
It was about 2 or 3 weeks. And then they began.
So quite a short.
Yes, yeah, short and intensive.
Any more questions come in? I don't think we have. Oh yes. Henry wanted to know if you remember anything about Brannigan with John Wayne.
Yes, I worked on that. There was a fight we did in a pub, and they couldn't keep John Wayne away. We had it went over several days, and on one of the days they decided they didn't need him. They were going to carry on and he did some shots before, and he was going to do some shots afterwards, but he couldn't keep away. He had to come in, and he was there, and he got next to the camera, and he was doing punches past the camera just to sort of be in it.
We'll come back to that in a second. Ian's just said the policeman here driving the car is played by Tony McCarty, later head writer on EastEnders and executive producer of Holby City.
All right. Well, there's a piece of information for you.
Yeah, you don't realise sometimes,
what people go on to do afterwards. Yeah.
So you did get a bit of time with John Wayne on Brannigan, it sounds like.
Well, yes, he joined in. He was quite chummy with all the people who were working doing stunts. He was obviously enjoying himself immensely when we did the fight on Brannigan. What have we got now? Oh, I was sorry, he was the blonde policeman.
Nobody's perfect. It must have been quite something to have met John Wayne, and yeah, my dad's a big John Wayne fan, so I'm sure he'd be quite jealous of you.
Well, he was really just like one of the gang.
So do you find that when you work with actors that perhaps you've seen on screen, that they tend to meet your expectations, or not disappoint, but perhaps be different, perhaps in terms of what you might have had in your mind of what they might be like?
Generally, I think most of them come out just as, just ordinary people. I mean, 1 or 2 can be a little bit, diva-ish, but most of them are fine.
Do you have particular favourites that you've worked with over the years?
Well, I liked Peter Sellers. I did do a film with Paul Newman. He was very nice. Yeah.
And you said, obviously, I think when you I think what else I want to ask then a second. Oh yes, I wanted to ask you about some of the sci-fi you did. So you did Blake Seven, Space 1999. Any particular memories of those two?
I think the one that stands out on Blake Seven is that the makeup they put on us was excruciatingly expensive, and they kept reminding the makeup girl that she mustn't use too much of it because it made us go sort of luminescent, you know.
See. I mean, did you like working on sort of more sort of fantasy like sci-fi, or did you prefer to work on things like the Avengers or James Bond?
Well, I suppose I was more comfortable working on something like the Avengers or James Bond, but I didn't really mind. It was a job, you know, that you'd be called and you'd go and they'd tell you what they wanted you to do. You'd put the costume on and do it, and that was it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I was just wondering about sort of other highlights of working on the new Avengers. So if this is your favourite episode, do you have a couple that come in sort of a close second and third?
Norse I quite liked. That was quite interesting.
Yeah, so it's a good one, that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, would you have would you have been around, Joanna, at this particular point?
I was there when they did this. But Joanna did all the running about herself.
I don't know whether, from her point of view, it was easier to do stunts in an outfit that was quite, you know, had a lot of give to it, or whether you might have felt a bit exposed in just basically some pajamas, really.
It's much easier to do stunts when you're wearing something like that you can actually move around in. If they give you something that doesn't give, it inhibits you a lot.
Because I think that was, going back to the original Avengers, I think originally MP, like the black and white series, she began in a leather outfit, and I think you were saying to me in one of our rehearsals that it kept ripping and it wasn't working.
Well, I didn't work on the black and white series. I worked on the colour one, and I think it was an episode called "You've Just Been Murdered." The word was that Diana hadn't been seen in a leather outfit for quite a while, and questions were being asked, and she should be wearing a leather suit. So they made this wonderful, beautiful leather suit for her. It was all made out of glove leather, and it was highly expensive. And because it was so expensive, they only made one. They didn't have a double outfit, and basically I wrecked it. Not intentionally, but I mean, we started off, and Ray was the stunt arranger, and he said, right, she's going to get onto the parapet and she's going to slip and hang by her arms. So I did that, and of course it tore under the arms.
Right.
So then he said, and she's going to swing her leg up to get a grip to climb back up, and of course the crutch all tore. And basically the wardrobe lady was running behind me for the entire time we were doing the fight with a loaded needle and thread, stitching me back in. So I don't think there was any mention of ever using leather again after that.
Because I would have thought they would have used more hard-wearing leather for the black and white series, and then changed.
I don't know. I did actually say, if you're going to be making me any double outfits in leather, could you give me elastic gussets under the arms and, you know, around the crutch so I can actually move in it? because it's quite rigid. It doesn't let you move.
Yeah.
But nobody took any notice of that.
Oh. Yeah, because all the Honor Blackman episodes, a lot of those were leather outfits and things. So
Yes, they were.
Interesting how the outfits evolved with.
Yes. Yeah, you can make it look a lot better if you've got something that you can move in.
Yeah. I mean, by the time you were on the New Avengers, did the way the stunts were being done, had it clearly evolved from the Emma Peel days, or was it sort of very much sort of similar?
It was more economical. It's probably the way I'd describe it. Previously, Ray would be there for, or Joe, whoever was in charge of the stunts, and we'd get called in and we'd practice it and rehearse it. And there didn't seem to be any sort of like, you know, we don't want you to come in tomorrow kind of thing. It was just whatever was necessary.
But you never felt at any point that the budget constraints were in any way sort of making things more hazardous, or
no,
it was all safe?
No, not at all.
I mean, we're getting to the end of Sleeper now. Is there anything you want to mention about Sleeper that we haven't touched on so far?
I think you've touched on everything.
Oh, brilliant, good.
On me.
I was just wondering about some of the production people. I think Cyd Child was the production designer for this one. Did you encounter Cyd Child at any point?
I might have done, but he'd probably be introduced to me as Cyd, and I wouldn't have registered, if you know what I mean. I'm better on faces.
Oh, right, yeah. So I was also wondering, sort of, you were saying that when you were doing the original Avengers, as the episodes went on, you were getting closer and closer to the broadcast date, and therefore it was always sort of a playing catch up. Again, was that similar to the New Avengers?
Well, I only did the one series with them, and I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
I was with the old Avengers because we would have moved on from a particular story onto another one, and then all of a sudden we'd be doing a couple of scenes that were needed for the one that we'd done. And sometimes you'd be working on, I think the worst we got was about 4 episodes at the same time. And sometimes you'd be doing that in the same day.
Because obviously with the New Avengers, it was only 13 episodes, so they had half the. So that must have probably felt a bit more in that.
Yeah.
Workload reduced. So when were you? So again, was it always supposed to be a 13 episode series, or was it shortened because of the money? Do you recall?
I don't know that. Sorry.
And at what point did you know that you weren't coming back for the second series? How did that sort of?
Well, they started filming it, and I wasn't called, so that's when I knew.
So
nobody said we're not going to use you next series. I just wasn't called.
Yeah. So that must have been quite difficult, I imagine.
Well, it was a bit confusing to begin with, but then it's one of those things, isn't it? Didn't think about it too much. Move on to other things.
Yeah, I suppose that's something that happens, and they say there's so much else going on. And kind of one of those things, really.
Yeah.
Let's see, anything else I wanted to ask you. On Superman 2, we were saying that you were doing the Metropolis battle sequence, and there's obviously lots of wind machines. And do you do any wire work on that, or was it just sort of throwing yourself about? And what was it like?
We were people in the street, and we had to get blown down the street, and things had to fall down around us, and whatever they could devise, really. It was quite fun. I think I was seven passers-by in the street. But then if you had a line and the camera focused on you, then that was your lot. You had to go then, because you'd be recognised.
So you quite prefer to have the non-speaking parts then, so you could.
Yes, but then the director would suddenly say, "Oh, can you say whatever?" You know. So then you had to go.
Because obviously, I think it was mostly Paul Weston and Vic Armstrong probably that you were working with on those.
Yes, yeah.
What's it like working with Vic Armstrong?
He was fine. Yes, yeah. I didn't work a lot with him, but I did work with him a few times. Paul I knew very well from the Avengers.
Yeah. I want to ask about Rocky Taylor, because obviously you what was your experiences working with Rocky?
Mad. Yeah, I worked with Rocky for a while on the Avengers until he went off on the Italian job. And then Paul took over as the regular double for Cyd. And he could be incredibly funny. He was also a very good driver, but a little bit crazy with it, but he did it, you know. I remember once we did something on, I think it was one of the Linda Thorson stories, and we had to do this fight, and it starts off with the guards at this jail are sort of going about their business, and then stuff happens. And they decided that they'd got to run sound. They were just going to run sound. They weren't going to actually shoot anything, but they needed to have the sound. Yeah. And Rocky went out of his way, because he was one of the guards. He went out of his way to get a scratchy pencil that made a lot of noise, because they're running sound. So he's doing his notes in his book before he gets attacked, and he's doing it with his scratchy pencils to make a really loud noise. And he was having a lot of fun just making sure that the sound was really loud.
Yeah, sounds like a great character.
Yes, yeah.
I think we did have a question pop up. Yes. So Ian just wanted to know if you had any other memories of female stunt performers on the Avengers or beyond. What's it like working with your female colleagues?
We didn't have very many. And we didn't often work together. There was Dorothy Ford that I knew quite well. She didn't live very far from where I lived, so we used to see each other from time to time. Dorothy was incredibly good with horses, so she did anything that involved horses. There were others that we would meet, like on Superman, where we were all in the street. You've got, you know, most of the stunt business, I would think, out there in the street, and you get to see people that you hadn't seen for a very long time. But you don't often have two girls involved in something that stunts at the same time.
I mean, obviously there's a lot more female stunt performers now, and a lot more female heroes like Wonder Woman and those sort of things. Would you have liked to have worked on more modern productions, or do you feel that you were there at the right time in the right place?
Well, I was there at the time that was right for me. That's the way it was, really.
And did obviously the industry changed quite a bit from the mid '60s to obviously the early '80s. What for you were perhaps some good changes or some bad changes in the way?
Well, I think what happens is whoever's doing the story tries to make it as impressive as possible. And then, of course, other people see that and they want to make theirs more impressive than that. So all the time you've got people trying to make it, you know, more unusual, more dangerous, more of everything. So it does change all the time.
Oh yeah, definitely. One thing I wanted to ask about was Captain Nemo and the Underwater City, whether that was an interesting experience.
Well, that we had to do a shipwreck, and it was supposed to be nighttime, and Joe came up to me one day on the Avengers and said, I've got some work for us, but don't tell anybody because we'll be moonlighting. And what we did was we did a day on the Avengers, and then we went up the road to the other side of Elstree and did a night working on Captain Nemo, and then we came back to the Avengers and did another day on the Avengers, and then we had to go back again because they hadn't finished, and it was just before Christmas. I think we finished on Christmas Eve, and it was very cold, very wet. I mean, they took us to see what it was going to be like, and they built part of a ship, and they had it on hydraulic rams so that it would rock and tip and everything. It's only part of the ship, it wasn't the whole ship. And then they had big tip tanks which would drop huge amounts of water over you, and then they'd got wind machines that were giving you these, I don't know, they were Spitfire engines. How fast does a Spitfire engine give you wind, you know? And then they had firemen sitting there with their hose pipes in front of the Spitfire engines, so that you've got this sort of, I don't know, 80-mile-an-hour rain coming in at you. The ship's going like this and the water's going over you. And it was interesting.
Sounds it, yeah.
And the second night, everything froze, so that was even worse. So the deck was covered in ice then, and we had icicles hanging off of the rails. So it was quite good to have it over and done with.
Oh yeah, definitely. We had a question just pop up then, again from Ian. Did you ever work with Roy Scamel, who sadly died very recently?
Oh, I didn't know he died. Yes, I did work with him quite a few times. Mainly when we were doing things like Superman, where we had crowds in the street. Yeah. I didn't really... Roy was one of these people that wherever you went, he'd be throwing his shirt off to try and get the sun on himself as much as possible. Oh, right. He was always trying to chop up his tan. Yeah, I didn't really work on Superman, but yes, I think it was on For Your Eyes Only with you. I know that much. I think it was on that one. I think he was doing some stunt driving or something like that. So yeah, if you look at, I think it's Superman 2, when the baddies are trying to cause trouble in the street and they're causing explosions and stuff like that. Roy Scamel was on his roller skates. Oh, right. Yeah. Going up and down the road, yes. Yeah, I remember that quite vividly. Yeah, that's yeah. Yeah, he did do a few conventions, Roy, and I wish I could have asked him about Superman now, but we talked about other things, so it was great to meet him. I did want to mention, obviously, Captain Nemo and the Underwater City was directed by James Hill. Do you remember James Hill at all? Because he did some Avengers episodes. Well, I knew him from the Avengers, but I'd never actually sort of got to a point where I chatted with him. Do you have a favourite director that you've worked with? The one I liked the most on the Avengers was John Krish, because I thought he was really sweet and very kind, and very appreciative as well. But a lot of them were all very professional, decent people. Oh yeah. Yeah, certainly I've met a lot of people from the stunt world and the film, TV in general, and one thing that always strikes me is how nice they are. And yes, yeah. And the last question I wanted to ask you was, what was the funniest moment you've ever had on there, or perhaps on the Avengers? Oh. Well, the funniest moment for me was that I can think of on the Avengers was when I was doubling for Diana, and she had her dog there, and we were both wearing the same costume, both looked the same, and we were taking it in turns to go on the set and do different things. I would do my bit, Diana would take over and do her bit, I would go back and do a bit more, she'd go back and do a bit more, and our chairs were next to each other. And I sat down after doing my bit and I'd said, over to you, to Diana, and she'd gone out there, and her dog jumped on my lap and looked me in the face, and then looked horrified because he realized I wasn't the person he thought I was, you know. And Diana was just killing herself laughing behind him. Well, yeah, it shows how good a stunt double you were for her, really. You know. Well, I think the poor little thing just got confused. So, was the New Avengers as fun as the old series? It wasn't too bad, but I don't think it was quite the same.
but you still had some nice moments with Patrick and Joe and.
Oh yes, yes, yeah. I got on with all of them. They were very nice people.
Is there any moment or two in particular that you have very fond memories of? You all together, that sort of thing.
Nothing that stands out. I mean, we'd see each other when I was there. We'd see each other all day. I can't think of any particular moment. No.
And so obviously the new Avengers only lasted two series. Again, like the old Avengers ending, there was obviously probably rumblings over the years that it would return, but obviously not. Because I think got fairly far into, before it was scrapped, there was going to be a reunion movie in the early 90s. Again, would you have had any sort of inkling about these sort of things?
No, I never heard anything of that. Once they went into the second series and started going to Canada and France and places, I didn't really know what was going on.
No. And did you ever see the Sean Connery Avengers movie? And if so, what did you think of it?
I didn't know he did one.
Yeah, Sean Connery played the villain. I should have said.
Oh, I see. I didn't see the film.
It was Ray Fiennes as Steed, and it was Uma Thurman as Mrs. Peel. It's not that great. It did suffer in the editing. Apparently it was a good 2-hour film, but the studio wasn't happy with it, so they cut half an hour out, and it kind of doesn't really make too much sense. But because it takes a lot of its inspiration from the more wacky Avengers.
Yes.
Kind of hides some of the problems, I guess. But
yeah, I've always thought, Steed has got to be Patrick, hasn't he?
Oh yeah. So you'd be quite against a revival or anything like that?
Well, depends on how it was done, but it'd be difficult to do without somebody like Brian Clements to write the stories.
Yeah. I was always quite surprised that Brian never had anything to do with the movie, and because we were talking last time about the fact that Brian was dismissed after Daniel Rigg left, and obviously somebody else came in. Then obviously begged him to return, and it was all going pear-shaped. And I don't know if you know, but he and Albert had a similar experience with the new Avengers. After the second series, there was talks of doing a third, and it got quite agonisingly close to actually making a deal. But yeah, it didn't happen, and they were going to have a meeting to discuss how the profits and things were divided from the two series. And I think Albert and Brian were going to that meeting, but the others at the meeting changed the time, so they had it earlier. And by the time both of them got there, the whole thing had been sliced apart, and they were cut out of it entirely.
That sounds like the way they used to do things.
Yeah, it seems very, very odd that they would sort of do that. And I think Albert was quite cool. I think towards the end of his lifestyle, and I think Brian was sort of looking after him. I think for some of that. So
yeah, it seems a bit of a churlish way of treating people that had made such a success of it.
I mean, did you? I mean, obviously you got the sense, obviously when they were replaced on the original series, but did you get the sense that they weren't as valued as they should have been at the time?
Yes. I think in a way it was their baby, really, and they'd made it what it was. And I would have thought they were vital to whatever you wanted to do with it, that you couldn't just push them out and replace them with somebody else, because they were the ones with the ideas.
Oh, yeah, they're the ones that made it so special.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up, Cyd, do you have any other final comments about the Avengers, what it means to you, that you'd like to share?
Well, it was a part of my youth that I appreciate and remember well.
And obviously, it's so many generations have latched onto it, and obviously we're here now talking about it. Did you ever get a sense at the time that it was this special show or did it feel like just another bit of work? And
well, at the time, it was red hot. It was the top show. It was the one to watch. I mean, you think of it now, and you don't realise just how big it was. It was really big in its time.
Yeah. But I suppose even then, you wouldn't think that 60 years later we'd still be.
No. No, because when it was finished, it was finished. Nobody talked about it anymore, and you tended to think, oh well, that's in the past. I mean, I got rid of all my old contracts and things, and I thought if I'd only kept those, I could have earned a nice little penny selling those off.
Yeah, I don't think there's not a person watching, including myself, that wouldn't have paid a lot of money for.
Yeah, I mean, there were odd bits and pieces that I'd bought, and they didn't have any value. You just think, oh well, it's got old, throw it away, Whereas now, everybody appreciates it. I mean, I remember Dave Rogers telling me that he would have given his right hand to have just managed to get his hand on one of Cyd's bowlers.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I've just mentioned your book one last time, Cyd. Can you just remind me of the title?
Well, the title at the moment, it may change, but the title at the moment is Judo, the Avengers and Me.
That sounds pretty good. And is it Phantom Books that are publishing that one?
Phantom Publishing are doing it.
Yeah, they do some really good autobiographies and lots of Doctor Who related content as well. So I imagine that'll be a really good book. So I recommend.
Well, I hope so. I hope it's good.
I'm sure it will be. So I recommend everybody buy a copy, and I look forward to buying my copy as well. I just want to say thank you, Cyd, for joining us for this evening to watch this wonderful episode of the New Avengers. It's one of my favourites. I'm sure most people's favourites as well. So thank you very much for joining us, and keep in touch.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
You too. Thank you very much. Thanks. Have a nice
Bye.
evening. Bye.